So, Cowboys Nation, the preseason is officially underway, and the Cowboys came away with a 17-7 win over the Seahawks. But the final score isn't even the most interesting part of this game. What's important is how young players performed against the real competition, and one undrafted rookie made some serious noise and quickly became one of the biggest stories coming out of the opener. And what makes it even more interesting is that this wasn't completely out of nowhere. He had already been showing some really good things throughout training camp. At the same time, Christian Parker's new defense showed some very encouraging signs, especially with the way these young players stepped up and made plays. So let me explain what happened in this preseason opener, who stood out on offense, who made an impact on defense, and which players may have helped their roster chances the most. What's up, Cowboys Nation? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Cowboys. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So, let's start with the name everybody is talking about this week, and that is Camden Brown. This undrafted free agent out of Georgia Southern has been quietly building buzz since the start of training camp. But on Friday night against Seattle, he made sure nobody could ignore him anymore. Brown only touched the ball 3 times all game, and 2 of those 3 touches went for touchdowns. The first one came right before halftime, a contested grab in the end zone where he had to fight off a defender just to bring it in. The second one might be the single best catch of the entire preseason so far across the whole league, a one-handed grab using only his left hand, and he still managed to secure it cleanly. For a guy who was not drafted back in April, this is the kind of tape that gets front offices talking. Georgia Southern fans already knew what Brown could do, since he was a touchdown machine in college, but doing it against NFL-level competition is a different challenge altogether. The receiver room in Dallas already has some crowded competition for the final couple of spots, and Brown just made that decision a whole lot tougher for the coaching staff. Nobody expects him to unseat the established starters, but the battle for that 5th or 6th receiver spot just got a new frontrunner. And honestly, it was not just the catches. Brown also showed up as a blocker on the outside, which matters a lot when teams are deciding who makes the final roster. A receiver who can catch touchdowns and also do the dirty work blocking on run plays gives the coaching staff more reasons to keep him around. Now, let's shift over to the quarterback position, because this is where things get genuinely interesting heading into the rest of the preseason. Both Joe Milton and Sam Howell got real opportunities to play extended snaps, and both of them made a case for themselves. Milton, who has one of the strongest arms in the entire league, looked sharp running the run-pass option game. His reads were quick, his footwork looked clean in the pocket, and he did not force many bad throws. Considering some of his previous outings, this might have been his most complete performance yet. Howell, on the other hand, got the start and had to deal with more pressure in his pocket for stretches of the game. Even so, he made the best play of the night from either quarterback, escaping a full blitz look from Seattle and scrambling to the right side for a first down. That kind of improvisation matters just as much as arm talent when you are trying to win a backup job. Howell also threw the touchdown pass to Brown right before halftime, showing good touch on a contested throw. At this point, there is no need to crown a clear winner between these two. The coaching staff will likely flip the starting duties around for the second preseason game to get a longer look at both guys against different competition. This battle should stay open for now, and that is a good problem for the Cowboys to have. Some fans might want a clear answer right away, but the coaching staff has no reason to rush this decision. Giving both quarterbacks extended run against different levels of competition only helps them make a smarter call later in the preseason. If anything, this game raised the stakes for week 2, since both Milton and Howell now have real tape to build on instead of just camp reps in front of no crowd. And before we move on, it is worth talking about the group that made all of this quarterback success possible, and that is the backup offensive line. Going into this game, there were real questions about whether the reserve linemen could hold up and give both quarterbacks a clean pocket. For the most part, they answered that question the right way. Both Milton and Howell had enough time to go through their reads without constantly feeling pressure in their face. The screen game was a particular bright spot, with multiple different screen concepts working throughout the night, including a smoke screen and a running back screen that both picked up solid yardage. That is notable because the coaching staff had reportedly struggled with screen execution during the previous season, and clearly they put in extra work on it this offseason. The run game also found some room to operate behind this group, which helped keep Seattle's pass rush honest. That said, it was not a perfect night up front. There were false starts and holding penalties mixed in, and depth at some of these backup spots is still something worth watching closely as roster cuts approach. But overall, for a line that had plenty of question marks entering the game, this was a much bigger positive than most people expected. Speaking of players who keep finding ways to produce, let's talk about Malik Davis, because he continues to make it hard for the Cowboys to ever fully move on from him. Davis carried the ball 7 times for 39 yards, averaging over 5.5 yards per carry. This is not a new behavior from him. Every single time he gets an opportunity, whether that is in the regular season or in the preseason, he shows up and does something productive with it. He is not the flashiest name on the roster, and he often gets buried on the depth chart behind other backs, but he just refuses to go away. Part of what makes him valuable is his ability to contribute on special teams and in pass protection, which matters a lot to coaches trying to fill out the back end of a roster. With the running back room still sorting itself out behind the top options, Davis continues to make his case as a dependable piece worth keeping around. It might not be a starting job, but it is clear he still has a role to play on this team. Now let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball, because this was really the first big statement game for Christian Parker's new scheme. Seattle's offense actually opened the game strong, driving down the field with help from a couple of penalties, but once that opening drive settled down, the Cowboys' defense completely took over. From that point forward, the pass rush got home consistently, tackling was clean throughout most of the game, and communication in the secondary looked much sharper than it had in some of the training camp practices. According to the post-game numbers, the Cowboys had 0 missed tackles in this game, compared to 19 missed tackles in last year's preseason opener. That is a massive improvement, and it shows up on film in the way defenders were wrapping up and finishing plays instead of just getting a hand on the ball carrier. Multiple players stepped up to make winning plays throughout the night, which is exactly what you want to see as a coaching staff evaluating depth. This defense forced a turnover on downs late in the game to help seal the win. And that kind of execution in a tight situation says a lot about how well this unit is starting to gel under its new coordinator. What stood out most was how the defense responded after that shaky opening drive. Instead of letting frustration carry over, the unit settled in and started dictating the tempo of the game. Linebackers were filling running lanes quickly, defensive backs were breaking on the ball with better timing, and the pass rush kept quarterbacks uncomfortable throughout the second half. For a defense that is still installing a brand new system under Christian Parker, that kind of response says a lot about how well the players are buying into the new approach so early in the process. That improvement on defense connects directly to our next point, because the young defenders on this roster are making these final roster decisions incredibly difficult in a good way. Shavon Revel Jr. only played a handful of snaps before being pulled early, since he's already considered locked into a starting role, and the coaching staff didn't want to risk him. Even in his limited time, he nearly came away with an interception. Julius had himself a strong showing, tying for the team lead with 3 tackles, including a huge goal line stop that helped seal the win. He also played well in extended snaps once he got onto the field on defense in the second half. James Houston recorded 2 sacks, with a third that got wiped out due to a penalty on Seattle, and every time he stepped onto the field, he seemed to be making something happen. Add in flashes from players like Isaiah Land and LT Overton, and suddenly, the depth on this defensive roster looks a lot more exciting than it did coming into camp. These are the exact kind of performances that force coaches to have tough conversations about who makes the final 53-man roster. Of course, no preseason game is complete without a few red flags, and this one had some real ones on special teams and in the penalty column. Carson had a rough night, picking up 34 yards in penalties by himself, including a defensive pass interference call and a face mask. He did have one nice pass breakup mixed in, but the penalties clearly stood out more. As a team, Dallas racked up 13 penalties in this game, and a good number of those came on special teams, where backup players were struggling with discipline and coverage lanes. There was also a costly mistake in the punt return game, where a returner tried to field a punt inside his own end zone instead of letting it go, and nearly turned it into a disaster. These are the kinds of mistakes that show up clearly on film, and the coaching staff will be pointing them out this week in meetings.